Good morning and welcome to Meet the Festival. It is so nice to be here today. My name is Catherine Lang and I am the Education Administrative Manager with the festival. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that while we are coming together from different places, the territory where the Stratford Festival is situated is governed by two treaties, the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant of 1701 and the Huron Tract Treaty of 1827. These lands and waterways have for generations been shared and cared for by the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Neutrals. As I think about the people who have sat where I am over hundreds and thousands of years, I am so grateful for their care of this land that enables me to enjoy living and working here now. I take it as my responsibility to honor these treaties and to continually be learning how to be a better treaty partner. Today, our focus is on the Stratford Festival archives, and we are joined by Christine Schindler and Nora Polley from the Festival Archives team. Christine Schindler is the archives coordinator at the Stratford Festival. Her work involves cataloging both the festival's design sketch collection and the archive's special collections. She also handles research requests from clients all over the world and is a specialist in the administration of the festival's photography collection. Currently a master's in library and information science candidate, she has a background in dance and museum studies. For Nora Polley, 2021 marks 57 seasons with the Stratford Festival. Her father, grandfather, and four siblings have all worked at the festival over the years. A stage manager from 1969 to 2009, Nora now works part-time at the Stratford Festival Archives. She has an insider's view of how the theater works and sometimes doesn't. Now, Meet the Festival is a Q&A style format, and I invite those of you joining us this morning to enter any questions that you have about the archives for Nora and Christine into the chat. We really would love to hear what you'd like to learn. To get us started, Christine, I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of background on the festival archives and tell us what makes the Stratford Festival Archives unique.
Thanks, Catherine. Well, the Stratford Festival was founded in 1967, and we're one of the largest and most complete performing archives in North America and the world in terms of our breadth and depth of collection. Our collection goes back to the starting of the festival in the early 60s and goes right up to the present. We meet the needs of the internal part of the organization, and we also meet externally our researchers and patrons. Our collection consists of our photograph collection, our production imagery, and our non-production imagery, like the behind-the-scenes imagery. We have press clippings, and we collect all of the administrative material from the collection. But one of the factors that makes our collection unique is that we also collect the production end of it. So we collect costumes, props, set pieces, and the stage management material, so that in theory you can create and you have every component of a production from its beginning to its final performance on the stage.
That is, it's amazing the kind of collection that we have out there in the archives. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit more about like how much storage do you have out there?
We have a large storage space. We have different types of storage within each in our secure storage areas. So we have high density storage, which is compressed storage shelving, which is on a track that rolls. And that's where we'll store our documents, and that lends itself to that type of material. And then in some of our other larger storage areas, we have a lot of vertical space, so that allows us to have store items on multi-levels, and where we can store our larger items, such as our costumes and our costume boxes and our set pieces and our props. There's we've been in our facility now for over 15 years. So, we don't have an infinite amount of space, but we're doing a pretty good job at managing and trying to utilize and maximize our space as best as we can.
That's great. And I'm just thinking about all the different varieties of things that you have out there when you talk about having costume pieces and set pieces. So you've got large items and then probably a lot of documentation and like photographs and stuff like that that you talk about. Nora, I'm wondering, could you talk about how do you decide what to keep? What goes into that kind of decision making?
Well, because we are an organization that can afford to have props and costumes in our collection, we try to take two costumes from each production each year. We make the choice in coordination with the wardrobe department because once things go into the archives, they don't get to be used again in production. So the wardrobe wants to make sure that they still have all of the little band uniforms from the Music Man, because every time we did it, they gave away a couple of them. Then the next time, they'd have to start again. We tried it in relation to the Shakespeare shows. Uh, we try to always get Juliet's ball gown. We get the bond from the Merchant of Venice, the caskets from the Merchant of Venice, the ass's head from A Midsummer Night's Dream. So we have all of those things. As far as the actual choice of costumes, sometimes it may not be a principal player, but it may be someone who's very famous, like we have a number of Maggie Smith's costumes in our collection. Also, things that are quite unique. Uh, just a few years ago, we were able to actually print on fabric. So we have the first costume that was made completely with material that had been produced in the festival wardrobe. And anything that's kind of curious, unique to a production, we try to get those things as well. Um, Set pieces, fortunately, we have enough headspace to take such things, and big pieces uh, like horses and from various productions. Um, so there's a bit of everything, but it sort of has an organizational bent.
Right. And just a little bit of a follow up to that, I'm wondering, do you know how they decide? Like, we've got the whole costume warehouse too. What goes into the decision of what might go into the warehouse versus what goes into the archives?
Well, we have a set of, I think it maybe is a restoration footman costume. There are like 8 or 10 of those. So they don't give any of those to us because people wore the same thing as for livery for many, many years. So it's usable in a lot of different shows. Um, but things that are made in the festival are our priority. Uh, when you do a modern dress production, it's quite possible that most of the things are purchased. We don't have purchased things in the collection. We want to show off the extraordinary workmanship of the people in our uh, departments, in our prop department, and in our wardrobe department.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so the job of an archivist feels like it's kind of a specialized area. It's not necessarily, I don't think, something that just comes to mind as a possible career necessarily. Christine, I'm wondering if you could talk about like what makes a good archivist. What maybe would somebody think about if they wanted to be going into that line of work?
I think what makes a good archivist is you need to have a good eye for detail and pay attention for detail. We're a good part of our job is cataloging, so you need to be able to, possibly taking measurements as I'm doing with design sketches, noting specific information on a donation or an item. I would also say an enthusiasm for history and a love of history, and history of all sorts, um, and an organization. Organization is key. That's kind of part of being an archivist is there's a structure to how things are organized within the collection. I would also say enjoy um, working with the public. We're a service industry. A part of our job is also reference requests. So having that keen interest to help a researcher find and locate the material that they need for their project is something you should be enthusiastic about.
definitely. Oh, we have a question that's come in. This is great. So, has there ever been an emergency where something from the archives had to be retrieved to use in a production? Maybe Nora, do you want to take that question?
Yes, okay. Um, we did the Midsummer Night's Dream in the 1970s, and the first time we did it was directed by Robin Phillips. It was, think of her name, Nora. Jessica Tandy played Titania. They remounted the show the next year, and Maggie Smith played Titania. So she had a whole new set of. During the run of in the summer, Maggie Smith was injured and was out of the show. Her understudy did not fit into her costumes because Maggie was very, very tiny. But there was an exhibit at the local art gallery of the costumes from the year before. So we made a bargain with the art gallery that they could have the Maggie Smith costume in their exhibit if they would give us the Jessica Tandy costume for the show. And that's what her understudy wore. So it was a costume that had been made for the production, just not that one.
That is a great story. I love things like that. It's just amazing how in theater you just find a solution and it can be really, really out there sometimes what the solution is. That's fantastic.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, so I think you were talking about how you work with a variety of different people that come into the archives for with questions and stuff like that. One of them being actors. And so I'm wondering, what do actors who are working on a show usually look for when they come into the archives?
Quite often, they're looking to see how the show was cut or put together in previous productions at the festival. We have videos since 1968 of all our productions in the archives. Some of the earlier ones are just black and white, and they sort of look like they were shot in an underground car park. But the more recent ones are in color. And so you can come and see, but you could also come and read how the plays were cut or how decisions were made about the words, because we have all of the stage manager scripts from the very beginning of the festival. So what they're looking for is a bit of help, probably with a difficult sequence in the play, or maybe that their director has cut something that they'd like to figure out how they could get the idea back to the show. We also have what I call the composite scripts. Most archives do not create material. They collect and preserve material. But a number of years ago, Dean Gabriel was directing The Two Gentlemen of Verona, and he wanted to know if there was a document that would show him all the changes, recommendations that had been made in Shakespeare's text in previous productions here. And I told him there wasn't such a document, but I could make him one because we have all the stage manager scripts from the beginning. And the stage manager script is the Bible as to how the text was spoken in performance. So I made that for him, and it became an interesting thing for other directors and people who worked with the text, dramaturgs. So it became a project for me to make a composite script for each of Shakespeare's 30. So I started alphabetically with All's Well That Ends Well, and 6 years later, I did The Winter's Tale. And the demand for the composite scripts is quite high, so that it now means since we have a basic one, I now just have to update as we do the shows. There are some shows that we have done so often that they actually come in 2 volumes, because you can really only mark up a script in 6 different colors. Eventually you run out of colors, of course, but also then you can't even read it. So shows like Much Ado, which I think we've done 12 times, they have a second. But it was a fascinating exercise just to see how directors had cut the text so that whatever concept or message they were trying to get across would be clearer for an audience.
That is incredible. What a job that would be to put it all together, and what an amazing resource to now have. Like, that's just incredible. I'm wondering, aside from actors, and could you talk a little bit more about who else comes in to look for things in the archives and what types of projects they might be working on? Kinds of requests do you get, I guess, is the question I'm having. Christine,
Christine,
you
go
want to take
for
that
it.
one? Yeah.
We have like high school students and university students that come in and they're doing a research for an English project or a drama project. They're looking for, they're studying the history of a play or history of a production. They're looking for design. We also have academics that are studying Shakespeare. They'll study the plays, the text. So they'll want to look at that material that goes with that as well. Um, we also have patrons that are interested in looking at our press clipping. We have an extensive press clipping collection that goes back to 1952, and that's one of our well-utilized productions, our, material that we have that patrons will come in and look at. Our photograph collection is highly used. In particular, our production imagery is highly used in journals, for the media. So we do get a fair amount of requests from academics, and if you want to use our production imagery to go along with an article that they're writing in a journal.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I don't know if this is totally connected to that, but it might be something that has come up when people have been looking for something. But I'm just wondering, could you talk about what is the most interesting item or artifact that you have in the archives, and maybe what you think is most interesting is different for each of you. So maybe both of you could answer that, and we'll start with Nora, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, okay. When Bill Hutt, who was a member of the company for many years and was an original company member, when he died, Frank Holt, who was the head of the props department, built a replica of the festival stage's center pillar. It was only about a foot tall, but it was stained. It was made of the wood from the festival stage. It was stained to look like that. And that is where Bill Hutt's ashes were stored during his funeral. Now, for his actual burial, the ashes were moved into another container, but we still have the one that contained his ashes first.
Wow, that's incredible. Christine, is there an artifact that stands out to you?
Um, I would say not particularly a specific artifact, but I've been working for the last several years on the design sketch collection, and I've really gotten to, my hands and go in deep into that collection. And I just find that the design sketches are just absolutely amazing. Being able to look at, the designers' history with us from their early days and their early productions, and going back to maybe like Desmond Healy, where we have some of his final productions that he worked with. We have those sketches. So we have, and they're, some of them are graphic and watercolor, some of them are pastels, some of them are a little bit more intricate with mixed media that'll have sequins on them, fabric swatches attached to them. There are some very interesting ones from the production of the Satyricon that we did in the 1960s. We have, I believe, most of the Zodiac costume sketches, and they're just absolutely stunning. You have sequins attached to and pastel, and it's a really lovely mixed media, and they really truly reflect when you see the costume and compare it against the sketch, just how true to life that is in this particular case.
That's so interesting. And did you say there were sequins attached to, like, do many of the costume sketches come with samples of the costume materials and that kind of thing? Like, or are there a lot of them just the drawings?
Some of them do come with fabric swatches that are used in the actual building of the costume. But in the case of the Satyricon, the sequence is actually glued on almost like glitter to the specific area where that is part of the costume.
Oh, amazing. That's such an interesting way to draw. I love how designers have such different styles of drawing and illustrating their costume sketch, like how they create their costume sketches. It's just amazing. You kind of see some of the samples of that type of thing behind Nora there.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
some designers are very precise, and what you see in terms of their sketch is really true to life to the features of the actor that they're wearing, and they're very in terms of very a lot of detail in the actual design. And then Desmond Healy, for example, his designs are more of a flourish, I would say. They're not as precise. Like you can't, it's amazing how you can take this very general but beautiful, non-specific design of a costume and turn and the wardrobe and the cutters and the seamstresses can actually replicate that. It's just an amazing skill that we have.
it is. It's just such a process. It's so fascinating. I agree. It's amazing how they can take that and create a pattern. It's such a fascinating the whole thing from the we talk about from page to stage sometimes, and it is so fascinating to see how it can start from a drawing and then turn into this beautiful piece of a wardrobe piece. I'm wondering, in terms of the artifacts and stuff, Nora, having so much background with stage management and having worked on so many shows over the years, and now working at the archives, do you find yourself like how does that work with like do you find yourself remembering the productions as just something stand out from time to time as you're working with something from a show that you worked on? Does it bring back stories from that show at all?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Christine and the rest of them can attest to it because I tell all kinds of stories at the coffee break. And mostly because you see things. I did indeed do 68 productions with the festival. I did Much Ado About Nothing 5 times. So it's really interesting uh, to see when I'm working on photographs for the most part. I'm trying to update the number of people who are actually identified in photos. Uh, because at the beginning, although we have photos all the way back to 1953, at the beginning only the principal players were identified, and the rest of the people in the picture were referred to as the supporting Canadian cast.
Mm-hmm.
So I've spent a lot of time identifying people in photographs so that they can be used, as Christine has said, for researchers or journals or books about the theater. And uh, you can't use a photograph outside the festival if you don't get the permission of the people in the picture. So it's essential that we actually get those names so that when someone wants to use a photo from a particular production, we can make it available to them.
That's great. So then do you have to follow up with the people in the pictures to get their permission? And can you reach most of them?
Christine is really, really good at that. She is a, she's a just she's a terrier when it comes to permissions. She does an extraordinary amount of research to try to find people, or if those people are now deceased, find members of their family and their estate. At a certain point, you can, I think, say that you've done due diligence and not been able to reach somebody, but very seldom does Christine ever resort to that. She usually finds who she is looking for.
That is excellent. That sounds like a whole other, like another aspect of what it takes to be a good archivist.
Yeah.
All of the types of sleuthing and things like that you need to do, become a detective.
Yes.
So I want to also just mention again that if people who are watching have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'd love to hear what you would like to ask too while you're thinking of things, or if you have any questions you'd like to put in the chat. We'll continue on here. I'm wondering, so we're in a really exciting time and important time of change. What do you what do you see as the connection between the past and future of the festival, and what can we learn from exploring the archives? Maybe Christine, do you want to start with that, and then and Nora, then you can share as well.
Um, as we're going through our collection and cataloging it, we recognize that there are gaps in our collection. And where the archives can link the past and the future is that there's so many voices and stories that have not been told. And you can see that now once we've gone through our collection. Um, for example, our artisans, um, you know, learning about the process for our cutters and our seamstresses and our sewers and our props makers, and even stories from the technical end of it, our technical directors and our technical team, and stage management. Those are gaps that we don't have all those complete stories in our collection that we need to to have to go through to have a fuller and a complete picture of the history of the organization, and that also enriches um, the organization and its history to learn to make sure that every story is told. Um, and I think going forward, having those stories and sharing those stories, our future generations, our kids, can see um, what career options there are in the theater, behind the scenes. Um, some students don't, they just kind of know what they see on the stage, and they don't know who's the community that's involved behind the scenes to make sure that that happens. Also, it's preserving those skills, the millinery skills, our team that builds our shoes. Those are skills that need to be documented and preserved so that they don't go away.
Absolutely. And Nora, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Well, certainly this year, because our present is so unstable, the festival has come to the archive for a lot of information and things that then go on to STRATFEST at home. We've had many, many requests for things within the festival itself in order to present our past, inform the present, so that we can actually get into the future with 2 feet on the ground. But we've had a lot of use of the actual collection in relation to the things that are being done right now. I was at the final dress rehearsal preview the other day of the first cabaret that's happening. And at the beginning, when the recording of Antony said, "Welcome to the Stratford Festival," we all cheered and clapped and carried on. We are so excited about the fact that it looks like the Stratford Festival will have a future, but a lot of that future at the moment is being found in the past.
Yes, it's so true and so interesting. Um, we have a question that's come in. Can you explain the process of making a request to the archives, and what is the lead time for a response? And Christine, would you like to answer that?
Okay, is that an external request or an internal request? Or
An external request.
The lead time. So if a patron is looking for a photo request, I would say give as much time as possible um, to before your publication deadline, or so that we can track down the artists that we need to or their estates. I would say, we can sometimes do photo requests within a couple weeks, but it really depends if, I'm going to an agent and the agent needs to reach out to the artist. And if the artist is, not on their phone all the time or on their email, it can, there's lead time that happens. So we also need to kind of have a process as to what the photograph is being used for. So kind of determine the use within our contractual obligations within the CTA, to determine if what permissions and if there's any fees, artist fees that are associated with it. academic use, commercial use. There's different conditions for the uses. So if you can give us a couple months, that would be fantastic. A couple days is really hard to turn around.
It's really helpful information because you really would have no idea all of the background that would go into necessarily requesting something from the archives. So knowing that it's more of a long-term thing or slightly longer term anyways than just a quick something for the next day is very helpful for people who would like to access some of that stuff from the archives. We have another question. So other than the book, the composite scripts, is there anything else archived from the stage management side? Nora, would you be able to answer that?
Yes. When I was the production stage manager at the festival in the distant past, I certainly remember at the end of a rehearsal, before just before the show opened, when you're packing up the rehearsal hall, someone, usually an assistant director, had done an extraordinary amount of research photographs and articles and things that were hung on the bulletin board in the room. And it always seemed to me a shame that one was now going to recycle all that. So, as with lots of people who didn't know about the archive, as I didn't at that time, you take it all down, you put it in a box, and you send it to the archives. But I also wanted to make sure that all the things that put the show together actually got to the archives as well. So quite a while ago, I made up an archive list, and it has about 50 items on it, and mostly documentation of one kind or another. And we were trying to get things from every production. We're trying to get the stage manager's notes, prop notes, the production notes, costume drawing copies, and then anything that is unique to their particular show that they're working on. So the stage management files are fairly up to date and contain a lot of information. Yeah.
Excellent. It must be tricky. I guess that goes back to the question of like, how do you choose what to keep? Because if everything gets sent over to the archives, you get to decide what's the important stuff that needs to be preserved and
right. So there is a list for stage management.
That makes sense.
Do just that.
So for those folks, I guess it goes towards like accessing some of the materials here. This question, for folks who can't visit the festival in person, how can they explore the archives? What's a good way? Can people visit and learn what's there if they can't be here present in town? Maybe Christine, do you want to start with that, and then Nora, if you want to answer it too.
If we're currently right now we're closed to the public, but in the meantime, you can go onto our website, onto the archives page, and we have our online catalog. And on the online catalog, it's constantly being updated. Stephanie Vaillant, our cataloging archivist, is getting as much material up there as she can. Most of our production images are up there, with the information attached to them, right from 53, I think, almost up to the present. We also have our some of our costumes and our bijou and our hats. That's information that's up there as well, so people can look at that. We're working on getting our press clippings there. So there's press clippings there as reference. And then if there's something that you wanted to see, you can either email us about that, or you can, when we're open to the public, you can come in and look at that press clipping on hand and on site. But that's a good start, is to have a look through our online catalog.
That's wonderful. Nora, have you been working on things for the online catalog as well? Do you have or other suggestions of how people can learn more about the archives?
Well, actually, my work with photographs has the main thing that now those photographs can go onto the site, and we know who all the people are that are in them. because we spent a long time making sure that whatever went up on the site was complete with the names of all the people that are in the photo, those kinds of things. And I'm also now working on what are called photo breaks, which is non-production photography. So like opening night receptions and picnics and the cricket match and all those kind of things.
Oh, that would be great, because then you get a view of the history of the festival, more than just from what was on stage, but actually what was it like in the community and around the festival during those seasons as well. That'll be incredible. So, for the online catalog, you say you're going to continue to expand it. What is the hope, to eventually have everything in the festival included, or what's the goal? What are you working towards with that?
Maybe I certainly think that, yes, eventually one hopes that everything that we have in our collection will be represented on the website.
Wonderful. And do you find that, like, have you been getting many requests? Christine mentioned, like, in your description, you were saying how there's people from all over the world that you're working with. So I'm wondering, like, what kinds of places are contacting you for information? And is it because of the catalog, or have you always been receiving requests from distant lands?
Well, we have been, that since I've been there, we have been receiving requests from, North America and in Europe, requests. Some of those requests tend to be prior to the catalog, where you could look up these, which you can look up now, are, family members wanting to know, they're in discussions of, they saw a particular production and they want to know who, played Juliet or who played Romeo, and they're in a dispute. So they would want me to have a look up and, confirm someone's statement on that. But right now with the catalog, our photo requests that we've been receiving, again, through North America and Europe, the researchers that have been able to go and provide me with specific information, like, I would like, here's the image that I would like to use. So that's very helpful, and it compresses the time, the lag time, the research time, because they know what they're looking for. And instead of, prior to that, they would give me an idea of what they're looking for. I want something from a specific scene. And if it doesn't exist in terms of approved production photography, then we'd have to go back and forth. But now they can look at that, and then they can see what they want. And it's very helpful for them, and also for us as well.
Excellent. It's such a nice way, because you talk about possibly people not knowing that the archives is there, and there's so many rich treasures to be found. And this is such a nice way for people to be able to really get a sense of what more is there. Now, you said that you're closed to the public at the moment, but I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what's available and accessible, like once what you were offering before, what we might be able to hope to see again as hopefully we come out the other end of the pandemic. What types of things do you offer for the public to be able to get a better sense of what the archives is? Can they visit, that kind of thing? Maybe Christine, if you don't mind taking that question.
So prior to the pandemic, we had archives tours twice a week. So going forward, if that happens down into the future, that's an option for patrons to come in and look at. You can come and conduct your own research on site, looking at our press clippings, our wardrobe Bibles, looking at specific costumes, stage management in terms of prompt scripts. We do have researchers that are very interested in looking at the prompt scripts. In particular, they're studying a little bit in terms of what was cut in the composite scripts, and they'd like to compare that as well. We also have patrons that are researching and want to look at our audiovisual material, as well as our production imagery. So those are some options that we've had that probably going forward, once we're able to open back again to the public, they would be available to them.
Wonderful. Feels like a nice way to be able to go through and see some of that history will be wonderful when we get to the point where you can do that again. Somebody's wondering, how was the archives involved in collecting the historical material for Martha Henry's Prospero costume and staff? And I'm wondering, maybe Nora, do you want to take that question?
Uh, yeah, I'm just trying to think. Martha's magic cloak was made from bits and pieces from all over the festival. I think there was actually a piece of the tent that was attached to it at some place. But I think most of the decisions were made by the designer, probably by Martha herself. I'm sure she would have had lots of input into that. We have a number of the Prospero cloaks in our collection, so they could draw from those as well. I think they wanted it to be sort of the magic cloak of the Stratford Festival, um, as it were.
That's amazing. Did the material was the material in the archives that was taken to be used? Like, how did they get those pieces of material? Forgive me if you just answered that, but
Oh, no, they didn't take anything from us except I think a piece of the tent, which we do have. We do
okay.
have quite a large piece of the tent
Mm-hmm.
that was part of an exhibit a number of years ago. Because everybody who made a donation, the very, very early years of the festival towards the building of the permanent theater, was sent a small piece, maybe 1x2 piece of the tent on a card with the thanks of the Stratford Festival.
Oh, that would be a nice keepsake. That's amazing. Um, so we have a musician here who was wondering, are notes or notated musical scores kept in the archives as well? Christine, would you like to answer that?
Yes, we do. We have play scores mostly from the musicals, and if we do have some scores, if it was used in a Shakespearean play, if it was sent along as part of the stage management. So yeah, we do have music department records, play scores, like house programs for the music concert series that started in the 1950s. We have that material as well.
And we have some reel to reel as well. We have some physical pieces.
Great.
Came from the sound department.
Another question is, do you transcribe all digitized manuscripts, and do you do your digitization work yourself or rely on volunteers? Maybe Christine, do you want to take that question?
They specifically look interested in I'm not quite sure what kind of material they're interested in and what would be transcribed.
Well, so digitized manuscripts. So I'm wondering if it's like script work, either scripts that are being digitized, or possibly also the musical scores. Like, when you're digitizing any type of documents, I guess, do you do that? Well, I'm not sure what they're talking about in terms of what they're transcribing either, I'm afraid. If somebody wants to clarify that question, we would be happy to answer it. But the second part of it, do you do your digitization work yourself or rely on volunteers? It seems like a lot of work. Do you have help, or is it the staff that's doing that mostly?
Primarily what we're digitizing is our photographs, because our photograph collection is started in negatives, and then we move into slides and prints, and now into the current digital format. So we've been working backwards trying to get those photography collection up and running, which is on the website. In terms of digitizing our scripts from our stage management, if there's a request that comes through, we can certainly look at that. But all that stuff comes in paper format as it's transferred over. We've had volunteers in the past help us out with cataloging our collection, assisting us with identifying artists in our photograph collection with our slides. We have volunteers helping us out with our artwork. photographing that and putting up some inventory information. So that's where we have some volunteers coming in doing that, or we've had previously. And also with our press clipping collection. That's one of our collection that we do have someone come in and organize it. That material is transferred over from the publicity department, and that's something we can have a volunteer. We've had volunteers work on that.
That's wonderful. I think with all of the amount of stuff that you're working on digitizing, I think it must be very nice to have the help coming in for that kind of thing. We have another question. So some pieces are quite complex, such as costumes and large props. And have you attempted to capture them in 3D for the website? Not sure who. Nora, do you want to try?
I don't know.
Okay, Christine.
We're just photographing them at the moment, so I would say it's more two-dimensional in that sense. Perhaps something that's in the future we can look at that.
Yeah. It sounds like something that would be actually kind of cool. Probably, I don't know what's involved in that, but it would be amazing to be able to see it in 3D.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if you have, is there anything from working in the archives? So you're there on a daily basis. So obviously, you know all of the ins and outs of everything that's in the archives. I'm wondering is there something that you wish people knew more about, or more people knew about the archive, something that wouldn't necessarily be evident to people, but you just think, oh, people would love to know this, or I wish they knew we were doing this project, or we have these things. Maybe for
I
both.
think a lot of people, when they think of an archive, they think of something stuffy and dusty, and we are anything but that. It's an extraordinary place, an extraordinary facility. The Stratford Festival is very, very keen on what we are doing in the archives. They have supported us all the way through this pandemic. The fact that we are still working is pretty extraordinary. There are four of us. The director of the archives is Diana Babando, spoke about Stephanie Vio. That's all that are there right now, and we're working very hard. But once people, I think, if they could come on a tour, when tours happen again, they would find a very vibrant place with everybody working to try to put the things that we have into a format that is available to the general public. And it's not a stuffy old dusty stacks.
Christine, is there anything that you wish people knew more about?
I actually that we exist. There are a lot of people. There are a lot of people, even in the professional field of archives, when you're chatting of where you work, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that the Stratford Festival had an archive." And then when they find out, they're very excited. They're like, "That's really cool!" Like, come and visit. So I think that's the thing. It's just getting us out there and letting people know we are there. We're open for researchers of all ages. I've had requests from elementary students who are working on social study projects up into lifelong learners. So we're here for everyone, for all ages, and just when we're able to open up to the public, come and visit, come for a tour, come and do some research.
It's so helpful to know, because it could feel a bit like it's a closed thing that people aren't allowed. So knowing that you can go and visit and find out what's there, especially once things become available that way, it's great thing to know. Just to go back to the question we were wondering about, the manuscripts that were being referred to were personal memorabilia of people associated with the festival, such as correspondence and notes. And are those types of things going to be digitized and included in the catalog?
I think eventually they will be digitized, and I think pending. I think that's something in terms of confidentiality. That those are things that we need to factor in. But I think at least information about what we have in a particular collection, like Tanya Mosejevich's collection and any correspondence the basic information of the phone will be there, and it could be digitized in the future for internal use for someone to look on site perhaps, but maybe not open to the public in terms of open on the website.
Excellent. I don't know if we covered this kind of in a past question, but I'm just wondering, we talked about what's your most interesting item or artifact in the art. I'm wondering if there has been, what's the most interesting request that you've received? I feel like potentially you've been, there's so many variety of things that people could be asking for. I'm wondering if there was a unique request that you've received at some point for something that you would not have expected somebody to be asking for. This question is for either of you, if something pops to mind.
I can't think of anything right now. Particularly, no. Christine?
Gosh, not really. People will preface their email saying, this is a little odd, this might be weird. But I'm like, no, this is a typical request. Yeah, there's really nothing that sticks out at mind that is an unusual request. From an archives perspective anyway.
Exactly. You're probably quite used to such a variety of requests that everything seems normal, even if it seems like it might be strange to those of us not used to them. Do you have access, with the people who are donating things to the archives, it sounds like you would be involved with quite a lot of interesting people who might have things that they would like to share with the archives. And I'm wondering, what has your experience been with people wanting to give things to the archives? Is there something special that stands out in terms of being very meaningful? Not necessarily in terms of an artifact, because you've already kind of talked about that, but in terms of a collection in itself, or being interested that a specific person was interested in donating things that you maybe wouldn't have expected had wanted to share things with the archives. Do you have anything like that? Any stories about people who are sharing their things with the archives?
We've been very fortunate in that a number of people have wanted the archive to have their collections. Like we have the Robin Phillips collection, which we are just at the very beginning organizing. We have a number from Stanley Silverman, who's a composer, with a lot of his work. There are a number of kinds of donations that people have made. We get that donation of, you get the phone call, my parents are downsizing, and I have all of the programs and the souvenir books for the time that they went to the festival. Is that something you'd be interested in? And unfortunately, we have to say no, because we have lots of those things. And sometimes if the person is a bit emotional about it, we say yes, because we can always put it somewhere. But yeah, there are so many things that have come to us that we feel collect that are really quite extraordinary.
That's excellent. Christine, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that, or did that cover it?
I think that covers it. We've just been, grateful, but just pleased that so many people want to have their collection with us. It's a responsibility that we value and that we really hold true, and that we respect. That this is the home. This is where they feel that their collection should be for researchers to study in the future.
That's great. So I'm noticing we're almost out of time. I'm wondering if there are any last thoughts that both of you would like to share about your work, about the archives, or about the festival before we close for this morning.
Once you're able, please come. We'd be delighted to see you.
Yes, I concur.
Wonderful. Well, Nora and Christine, thank you so much for being here this morning. It's so wonderful to learn about the history of the festival and and for you to share some of the things that you're working with every day. The rest of us don't get to delve into that history in the same way, and so it's wonderful to hear about it, and to just really get an idea of the great scope of resources that are available there for people to be able to use in their research, or even just to go and um, enjoy the memories of productions that they've seen and that kind of thing. And I want to thank those people who have joined us on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning to be here and learn more about the archives with us. And so that is all for this morning. I invite you to join us again next Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and we will be with Marcus Nance and Vanessa Sears, company members from this first cabaret that is playing right now, Why Do We Tell the Story? So thank you again for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.